Welcome to Coachify, a podcast where we have moving conversations for expats with a coaching mindset on everyday topics. We bring helpful concepts closer to you so you can use them in your everyday life. I am Reka, a life coach working with expats, focusing on change management and resilience. You can connect with me via Instagram, Facebook, or my website, theenchantedyou.com. You will find more information about me, my guest, and about our topic in the episode notes. Today, my guest is Orsi, who is an English language and culture trainer, and she moved from Hungary to the US. Welcome, Orsi, and thank you for joining me.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for having me, Reka. I'm really happy to be here today.
I'm really glad you accepted my invitation.
Of course.
Um, in the previous episodes, we always brought some personal experiences, but always from within Europe. You went much further than that and moved to the United States. How was your experience with becoming an expat overseas?
Okay, so that's a very good question. It was a huge learning curve to start with. I lived abroad before in Europe, but this was a completely different experience, a very different culture compared to Europe, and a very different living situation as well. I moved here for love. And yeah, so first I came here almost exactly 5 years ago for 3 months.
Wow.
And then I knew that I'm going to stay for 3 months. And I had some time to explore
Mhm.
my surroundings. And I was in for a big surprise in
Yeah.
many cases.
And
So in
after
the
that,
first
yeah, sorry, after that first 3 months, did you go back to Europe or did you already stay?
Yeah, so it was in 2019,
Mhm.
and we all know that in 2020, what happened? COVID
Yeah.
hit. So we had to make a decision with my husband, and we decided to come here and explore and start a new life here in the
Wow.
US because everything was uncertain and we wanted some certainty in the uncertainty. So I came back in March in 2020.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Just before the lockdown,
So,
I'm guessing.
yes, one day before the borders
Wow.
were closed. Yeah, it's a really, really stressful experience, so to say.
Mhm.
But we made it here and I was really happy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you moved for love. This is something we call, or these people who move for love, we call love pets. That means that someone moves to the country of their husband, wife, partner, new family member, or they move together to a country where this person lives already. And it's a different experience than moving for work or deciding together to move to a different country. How was it for you to arrive somewhere, which country or what place was already sort of a home for your loved one?
Yeah. So it is always more difficult for the spouse, I believe. And yeah, so due to the immigration process, I couldn't work for the first 1 year of my stay in the US. So it was hard because back in Hungary, I had an established life, a career that I left behind. And I had to reinvent myself in this 1 year. And the difficult part about the visa process is you never know when you're finally gonna get your work permit or your green card. So I'm a person who likes to plan things. So it was super difficult for me. But I managed to overcome this by having a rigorous routine that was really helpful. So sports, also discovering all the new hobbies like polishing my German and learning Spanish. I had a routine for every single day. And this really helped me
Mhm.
during that year. And I also helped my friends with English. As
Mhm.
you mentioned, I'm an English teacher trainer.
Yeah,
So I took up these pro bono opportunities in this 1 year.
that sounds
Yeah,
great. Yeah, your
yeah,
routine helps a lot in changing situations overall.
absolutely. Knowing that you have something stable is
Yes.
very important. And taking care of your mental health
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
Super important. Yeah. And in terms of culture and realizations about my new home, I have a couple of things that I wanted to share about the US, if that's
Yes.
okay.
Yes, yes. I wanted
Yeah.
to ask you how was the difference in cultural aspect and how the transition was for you from the European focus to US focus, basically.
Yeah. So, how about starting at the tip of the iceberg, the things that are visible? Yeah. So, first off, so I live in Georgia, and maybe someone else's experience who lives in New York City or Chicago is completely different. But Georgia is in on the south of the US. And yeah, the distances are really big. So we have this saying that it takes 1 hour from Atlanta to go to Atlanta. So the traffic is insane. The roads are huge. The cars are big. So everything is just bigger than in Europe. I'm pretty sure you heard this before from other people living
Yes.
in the US. Yeah, so but when you see it yourself, it's like, wow. Yeah. So for when I first arrived, this was something that really surprised me that this is true. Yeah. And another thing that was really important for me that there were no sidewalks where we lived.
Oh,
So yeah. And my then boyfriend, now husband, told me, "Hey, do you know that you won't be able to go for walks?" And oh no, I'll make it work. Don't worry. Then I arrived here and no, it's not possible. So that was really strange. And then
what?
I just couldn't go outside and
Mhm.
go for a walk. Yeah.
I'm sorry, just a question popped into my mind that I don't know which part of Hungary you are from. I know you talked about it, but I forgot, sorry. But where I'm from, it's like a smaller city and nature is quite close. And it's something which I kept with me that I like to go to the nature. I like to go out. I like to walk. And depending on if you came from a bigger city or like a countryside, it could be really tough. How was it for you?
Exactly. I'm also from a smaller place, from the south, also from the south, moved from the south to the south. And yeah, so it was really strange. So yeah, walking was in my everyday life. I could even walk to the supermarket, to work, yeah, everything. So this was a huge transition. And then here it wasn't possible to walk to the corner shop. Yeah, because there are none, first off. And yeah, so the closest shop was like a 15-minute drive. And I had to adjust my life to that. Have to think ahead all the time, unless you want to drive every day. Yeah, that's also an option, but it's not for me. So yeah, it requires completely different lifestyle, planning ahead, and also transitioning from this to the big portions, the big packaging you can see in shops in the US. And I was really surprised. Why is the milk that big? Like 3 gallons, whatever. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of things, huge bottles. And yeah, then I realized that's the reason. So
Yeah,
everything is
because
just huge.
you cannot go to the
Yeah.
shop every second day when you forget
And
something.
you don't want to. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
What
Mhm.
about like bikes or biking? Is that a thing? in there?
Your own risk. You can try, but I wouldn't. I wouldn't. So right now, I'm pretty lucky. We live somewhere where we have a cycling lane, but it's not really safe, unfortunately. And even if you wanted to ride to the shop, it would take you an hour or so. Yeah. So the distances are just huge here. Yeah. And this was a big adjustment for me compared to my small bubble in Europe, in Hungary, and coming to this huge land.
You said to start with the things which are visible. So this was obviously one. What other things were the like first things which hit you in the realization, oh my God, I came so far.
Okay, another really positive thing I would like to highlight, positive to my views, yeah, is the diversity here. So uh, the Atlanta area, the metro area is really diverse, and I love it. You can find all kinds of restaurants, all kinds of people, yeah, in all shades of skin color, and I just love it. I've always been into cultures, getting to know other things. And I think it is safe to say that I've learned more about culture in the last 5 years than before my entire life. So, yeah, I got to know a lot of food, different foods. Yeah. And many people think that the US doesn't have good food in terms of original food, but I beg to differ. I think Southern kitchen is amazing. And we have a lot of good things, not just hamburgers and hot dogs.
Did you learn the local recipes? Did you learn the local foods, how to make them?
Oh well, yeah. So I just cooked chili yesterday. I think I think that could be one. Uh, I'm trying hard, but it requires some good cooking skills. So yeah, that's also something that I've been doing here more often than in Hungary, because in Hungary, I could go and just have a quick lunch somewhere. Here, I would need to get in the car and go somewhere to have this lunch. So it's not that quick after all.
When we move within the European Union, it's really easy, like relatively easy, because, you know, the paperwork is not that much and the distances are not so big. And basically, okay, I can move with like 2 suitcases. That's how I arrived to the Czech Republic originally when I first moved there. But then if you want anything else, you can just keep it at your friend's house or like a storage place and then get it later within Europe, you know. But taking a plane, I'm guessing, to Atlanta and then just bringing whatever you can on the plane, it's a big thing. How did you manage that?
Yeah, great question. So I also moved with 2 suitcases, as you said. And yeah, you can just buy everything else here. So I'm not really a material person. So I'm not that attached to things that I have, fortunately. So this is something that helped me. But I do know that people who come with their kids, with their spouses, that's a completely different story. And they usually use containers and moving companies to come here. But for me, it was pretty smooth, and you can get everything here, even for cheaper than in Europe. So this wasn't a big concern for me, fortunately. And I'm pretty used to moving around, even in Szeged, where I used to work. I moved about 10 times, 15 times, I don't remember. So, yeah. And also, that's really interesting thing here in the US. People are really flexible about where they live. I know there are people who build their own houses, they live there, they've lived their whole life there, but I see this tendency that people like to move for work. So if they get a better opportunity, for example, in North Carolina, they would just pack up everything and go. No problem. So they are not that attached to their homes, their house, and they move a lot. Yeah. Mm. That was also a big difference.
Mhm.
Because, for example, my Hungarian family, we built our home, and my parents have lived there for 30 something years.
Yeah, that's definitely the tendency in the eastern part of Europe. Yeah. You mentioned the long visa process and the sort of the luck factor of it. Was there anything else which was new for you and you needed to get used to it in terms of like administration or official stuff?
Yeah, so everything is smooth here, I have to say. I've heard in other podcast episodes that it's not the case in all European countries, but here everything can be done online, which really helps the process. For example, you can open a bank account without going to a bank. You can do your visa process online, except the interview, you have to go for that. But yeah, so these official matters have been really easy here. I don't have any complaints about that. Um, Other things that were different and new and good, other than official matters, are how can I put it? So, mm, beauty has many faces here, and I felt more accepted here than in Europe, like ever. So this was something that was really, really good for me, for my soul. And this is really interesting that even as an immigrant, you feel really accepted
That
in the
sounds so
US.
great.
Yeah. Yeah.
What were the signs
And
or what were the things which made you feel better about this, which made you feel more included, more accepted?
think it's the culture itself, the diversity, the nature of the US, that it's an immigrant country. And even though yeah, some things are going on in the world, I still feel that this is a really safe place for immigrants, even though we can hear some other things. But yeah, I feel accepted. Even my husband's cultural background is really diverse. One part of his family is Italian, the other part is Japanese and African American, and everyone, that's just my experience, okay? So everyone just love each other. Yeah. So this is a really positive thing that I've experienced here.
I'm so glad to
Mhm.
hear that. It's really
Thank you.
nice to hear such a
Me
positive
too.
experience.
Yeah. Mm.
Was there anything which was sort of a cultural shock for you? Positive, negative, like something which was really like opposite to what you expected, maybe?
Well, to be honest, I didn't have any expectations about the US because I wasn't interested in the US. It's really bad to say, but um, honestly, I never wanted to move here. And
I see.
life happened. Yeah, life happened. And I ended up here. So I had no expectations, no dreams about this place. So I just came here with a clean slate and I started learning about everything. To answer your question about exact experiences, one thing is the amazing customer service here. I've never seen anything like that anywhere else. Everyone is really polite and kind, and they look out for you. And especially in restaurants. So that was my first contact with customer service. The servers are amazing. They ask you many times how they can help you. And yeah, so this is something I would point out. But yeah, it also comes with the tipping culture. Uh, I think the US is infamous for this. You have to leave about 15 to 20% tip after each meal or any kind of service that you use. Yeah. hairstylist, yeah, anything. Yeah.
How was you mentioned that year when you couldn't work because of the visa process. How was that
Mhm.
year for you in terms of adjusting? And you mentioned your routine, you mentioned that you took much pro bono work. But how was it in terms of adjusting to the local culture?
Mhm. So let's keep it in mind that it was 2020 and 2021, so it was still COVID raging here. So for everyone, I think this period was a really, mm, yeah, secluded period when everyone, um, not everyone, I can't speak for everyone, but many people felt alone or isolated. And this was the case for me too. So technically, I started learning about American culture after COVID, but at home, I used this time to learn the language because I was in the lucky situation to have a native English speaker husband and also a mother-in-law, and I've learned tons. So I used this time to learn the language better and to listen carefully what's going on around me. So I try to use this for learning the language and also to pay attention to small things, cultural intricacies. For example, when you say hi in the US, you also say, "Hi, how are you doing?" or "How are you?" And this took me, I think, 2 or 3 years to come naturally because in Hungary, I don't know about you, but for me, it wasn't natural to say, "Hey, how are you doing?" And why is this person asking me how I'm doing? What do you think about this?
Well, for me, it's more like what's new with you. I think in my little Hungarian bubble, that's the more usual. And like the how are you is more like to those people who are close to me. But what's up, what's new with you? That's the general for me in terms of Hungarian culture or Hungarian language. But yeah, what you say that it comes together, sort of like it's a one phrase thing. I experienced it with Brazilians actually. So they always say "Oi, tudo bem?" and that comes together. So that's kind of my version of that. Also here in Belgium, French speakers also say that like the coucou, ça va, it always goes together. So yeah, I think it depends on the culture, but I think certain like regions as well or certain bubbles of people as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely. And it's really interesting that you brought up these examples. And it shows that even within one country, you might have different ways of saying hi. But what was really interesting is that we started small talk with even the cashiers or neighbors out of the blue, and people are commenting on what you're buying at the supermarket. Oh, I love this. I've tried it last week. That's a really good choice. So people are really friendly. So that first year, maybe this was one of the biggest realizations that people are really friendly, outgoing,
Mhm.
but also it is a bit more difficult to have real friendships and
Yeah, I wanted to ask
relationships.
that how deep it goes, like because here as well, people are really polite and kind and trying to help, even if you are not speaking the language that well. But building deeper friendships or longer lasting friendships, so far, I found it a little trickier. But I guess like it can be true for most of the expat experience that with locals it's always harder to build friendships because they already have their circle, they already have their bubble and sort of not in a need of a new friend. But yeah, I hear from friends that, for example, in Germany, it's harder to build deeper connections. I don't know how it goes in the US. For me, so far here in Belgium, I already got some Belgian friends, and I also have a few Czech and Slovak friends from the Czech Republic. So I find it like 50-50 true in my case, but I'm curious about your experience.
Local friends. So if I have to be honest, I have none that I acquired myself. So the local friends I have are through my husband's work. Yeah. And we occasionally go for parties or like house parties mostly, or dinner parties. But honestly, I agree with what you said. My experience is that Americans have their high school friends, like really, really, they go back, way back, and they stay friends with those people from elementary school or high school from their hometowns. And it is difficult. It has been difficult for me, but it's not impossible. I do think that I could also make a bit more effort to have more local friends. And it also depends where you live in the US. For example, this summer I spent a month in Pittsburgh. I was I had the luck to deliver a Hungarian course at the university, and then I managed to make some really good friends. But honestly, most of my good friends are my fellow immigrants. Yeah,
Yeah,
from
expats
mostly from yeah.
always keep together, right?
Yeah, we stick together because we're going through the exact same experience and we can support each other in a
Mhm.
way that locals, I'm not saying they're not able to, but it's very different. It's a different experience. And we recognize these small things and we can talk about it. And it helps a lot to talk about your occasional frustrations or the things you recognize or the opportunities you find. You can share it with your friends.
You mentioned that the first year you spend the time with learning and basically acquiring the culture and the language. And I know that now you help people fit in better and you're teaching people about the culture and the language. How did you get on with this business? How did you sort of transfer to this area?
Yeah, so even before living in the US, I really like to work with international groups, international students, and I helped international students in Hungary getting accustomed to Hungarian culture, like Erasmus students and medical students. So this was already within me, the love for teaching language and culture. So coming here, it took me a long time. I would say maybe the last 1 year was the smoothest. And I was thinking I would like to help other people, other expats to learn easier and to get to know things the easy way, not the hard way that I did. And there are things that you are just not prepared for. And I would like to help them be ready and give them some pointers how they can make this process easier. And for example, before I didn't really pay attention to my pronunciation, my intonation in English. And coming here made me realize that this is really important. So this is something I like to teach to my students as well. And also the underlying things in the culture, to understand it better, to be able to read between the lines and not get frustrated or treated bad, not to feel that you are treated bad. And these can enhance your adjusting process.
What are some of the things which are sort of under the surface and we usually don't think of or don't expect when we think about moving overseas?
Yeah, so this is also my perception and other friends and people's perception as well. But the American culture is not that direct. So when you speak, you really have to read between the lines, understand what they mean. There are these funny memes on Facebook or Instagram, what they say and what they really mean. So this is something that I like to help my clients with, and it was a learning curve to know. Also, you need to get familiar with the local accent. The even the grammar can be different in some cases. For example, here on the south, we make groceries. We don't go grocery shopping, we make groceries. And then even in some verb tenses, you use it a bit differently than in other places. So it's also good to know the regional differences. Yeah. And what else? I think this is the directness, the level of directness, indirectness is very important because if you speak their language, if you mirror the way they speak, you can get a lot better results in your private life and at work as well.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely in work culture, it comes out even more, these differences, because maybe in everyday life, you can find friends from your own home country or your own culture, and you won't notice it that much. But in a work culture, it can be a highlight, and like so easy thing like who to copy in your email when you email someone. It can be a huge difference because in one culture, copying there, putting there in CC a boss is highly offensive, and in another culture, it cannot be missed because then that means that you're trying to hide something. So yeah, I think these things in the work culture are even more highlighted. Yeah.
Yeah, and here in the US, my perception is that first you start a meeting with, "Hi, how are you?" And you just talk about your weekend and how your dog is doing. And then you get to the point. So this was something really strange for me. And okay, so these people are just wasting my time. Because, yeah, and then I realized that this is just their way, and we have to get used to it, and we have to get comfortable with these small talks, and also the way we convey our message. And for example, I had some instances when I was with my fellow mm, expat friends, and the girl started to talk to an American person, like she would talk in Eastern Europe. She was from Eastern Europe. And the guy got offensive immediately, and the situation escalated, and there was no resolution. It was about the problem with an apartment. And then I stepped in and said, I'm really sorry. Then I started to speak his language of politeness, and then we resolved the issue. So you have to know these tiny little things that go a long way.
Wow, that was a great example for this, actually. Thank you. Thank you for bringing it in. Yeah, and I hear, right, I saw it from foreigners that their perception is that Hungarians don't really do small talk. And I was thinking about it, and I must agree to a certain level, of course, because for sure we are not sharing our whole life to the first person on the street. But yeah, generally, I like to get to the point. And as I was thinking about my friends, family, ex-colleagues, whoever, I was like, yeah, we don't really do that. Like, I'm not going to ask about about someone's weekend if I don't care about that person, or I'm not going to ask about their, I don't know, dog if I don't have any connection to that person. Yeah. So this must be even a bigger difference coming from this culture going to that culture.
Exactly, exactly. This is a really good point. So it also depends where you're coming from. Yeah, so it can greatly, your experience can differ. Yeah. I think every individual is separate world of its own, or
Yeah.
your own. So, along with all these cultural differences, there's also your personal level that comes into play. Yeah.
I know you are in Georgia and that's your experience mostly, but I was wondering if there is like this universal US language which you learn and then you know the culture, or is there big differences within like even areas or in between states or in between areas? Is the language changing? Is the culture changing? Like can you separate these things or are they like intertwined too much?
This is a wonderful topic. So, my husband is from California, and I got used to his clear California accent. His accent is so clear that sometimes when he goes somewhere, they ask him if he needs an interpreter because they think that he's a foreigner as well. And let me share a story with you. My first morning in the US, we had guests over, my late grandfather and my aunt and my cousin. So I woke up and I went downstairs to have my coffee. And then Grandpa asked me, how did I sleep? But with his Georgia accent. And I had no idea what he was saying. And clearly, what's going on? And okay, I should have guessed, but yeah. And I was staring at him. I'm sorry. And he said it again. And then my cousin came to my rescue and he interpreted from English to English. So to answer your question, yes, I think there are big regional differences, and you have to get used to your regional accent, your regional dialect. Yeah, there are certain things that, even in the vocabulary, that are said differently, as well as the grammar. Big universal truth or language? I don't think so. Yeah. So, yeah, this story illustrates really well that, yeah, things are very different from state to state.
Yeah, it was a great explanation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, this what you said about your husband's accent and his experience there reminded me of our experience in Belgium. So I learned French in high school, and a little bit during university. I was in summer university and things like that. But I was worried how much I will understand the French here because with native French speakers, I'm always troubled. I don't know, I just have a hard time. Like if I listen in a movie or podcast or something, that's fine. But usually I have a harder time to understand live speech. And then we came here and I understand people here so clearly. And I first thought that, oh, they're so nice. They're slowing things down and articulating more for me. And then no, it's just their way of speaking. They articulate much better, clearer, so I have an easier time to understand. And then I met here in Belgium French people who are from France, and they were kind of shocked at first because it was so different for them, and they were not sure if those people who are here, if they just trying to make sure that they can communicate effectively, and then they learned that no, it's the way of speaking here. So yeah, French is not the
You're
same.
amazing. You speak really good French. Yeah, really good. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah. So I agree with you. Um, I understand someone from California all day, every day, but the local accent is causing me a lot of trouble
Still
even
this day?
today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, yeah. If you're not exposed on a regular basis, I think it's difficult to pick it up. So my advice would be for everyone to try to be exposed more. Yeah, to the local language.
Yeah. Do you have any stories you would want to share with us about life there in the US?
Okay, so yeah, um, it comes with a lot of frustrations as well as beautiful moments. I think, yeah, you're in for a lot of new things. when you move here, a lot of things will be different, like the healthcare. Yeah, this is something big that is different. um, the culture, the consumer society. So yeah, when I moved here, I went down the rabbit hole of of Amazon and other delivery services. And my husband was joking that you became a real American wife now. But yeah, so this is something that I got caught up with. And I think it is easy to get caught up with the local things, and because they're so convenient. In the US, one of the best things is convenience, for sure. Yeah. So, yeah. I would say most important thing is not to have assumptions. Try to come with a clean slate. And I learned this from another Hungarian expat. And actually, that's funny because I was testing him. And it was a language test. And I asked him just to find out if he knows the comparative structure. So, what is the difference? What is the main difference between Hungary and the US? And he told me that that we shouldn't compare two countries, actually, because when you move here for good, you should just accept things. You shouldn't compare it with your home country because it's going to be very difficult and it's going to give you a hard time. And I think it has some truth to it. And I just find it funny that this came up in a language exam situation. Yeah, and he taught me a lesson about living here. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great actually. And it's I can relate to that, it's true. And there's a difference between you knowing you moved there for good and you moving somewhere for a while, because I know this is not my last country, so the expectation or the approach from my side towards the place is different than probably yours, who went there with her husband and you know you will stay there. And you mentioned that you lived in Europe in different countries as well. How was the experience for you, not comparing, but how was the difference for the situation for you in terms of approach, in terms of acceptance this time?
Yes, thank you for the question. So, in Europe, I always knew that I'm going to return to my home base, to Hungary. So I always had a time frame to it. For example, for my Erasmus, it was 1 year. And I knew that I have to enjoy this time. I have to get the best out of this time. So it's a completely different experience. And I was also younger. It is very different. I do believe it's different to move abroad as a younger individual than in your late 30s, for example. Yeah, so yeah, this time frame, knowing that you're returning, makes the whole experience completely different. Yeah. And also, yeah, in Estonia, same thing. So I try to use this time to fully explore everything. Whereas here in the US, by the way, the first 3 months, I thought that, okay, I'm only staying for 3 months. So I'm like, oh, wonderful. The honeymoon phase that we all know. And oh, beautiful diversity, new food. I loved it. And then when I moved back in March, then it hit. Okay, this is forever for now. So then the negative things sink in as well. And living here for 4 years, yeah, shows all the faces of the country. So this is the longest time I spent in a country altogether. And it was enough time to see the negatives or the differences. And yeah, it's hard sometimes. It's really hard, especially when you're so far away that you can't just go home with the next plane. like from London, for example. And during this period, I missed really pivotal moments of my friends' lives or my family's life. And it's really hard. So if you move somewhere for a longer time, you have to be prepared for these moments as well. Yeah.
Yeah, missing
Hope
the
that answered
moment.
your question, maybe.
Yeah, it's great. And
Okay.
I can relate so much to missing pivotal moments of friends' lives. Um, just the other day, I was thinking that with one of my closest friends just gave birth recently, and then I was thinking that with my other friends, I saw their kids growing, and now I'm missing the whole thing, sort of. I mean, they send me pictures and we talk, but it's not the same than when I'm just 40 minutes away, a train ride away, and then I can go and help out or just visit them. And now it's like countries away, and I need to figure out when to go, and we need to, scramble everything into 2 days when we finally meet. Yeah, that's one of the hardest part for me as well. Yeah.
Yeah. But let me put a positive note on all this. For example, I feel that with certain people, I got closer due to the distance, the physical distance. For example, with my family, we talk a lot more than when I lived in Hungary. So, so this kind of strengthened our relationship. Yeah, so I just want to say that there are ways to keep in touch, and I'm so grateful for my friends who keep in touch with me to the present day, even though there's a huge difference, an ocean between us. But we are still good friends and we share everything with each other. I think it's beautiful. So when there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. Yeah. Thank you very much for sharing that. We are slowly getting to the end of our episode. Is there anything, any advice or thought which you would like to give to our listeners?
Yeah, so my best advice would be to do your research, check where you're going. Yeah, this is coming from my planner perspective, but it does help. I think it helps with the shock. So I've done both before, not doing any research and doing research before moving, and things were a lot smoother. And also, my other advice would be if you're moving with your kids, with your spouse, invest in language training even before moving, because it will help you tremendously. Also, if you're not feeling well, if you feel that you need professional help, it's totally normal. If you feel that you need help in your new country, then talk to someone. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Oshi. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for sharing your experience, your stories. It was really great to talk to you.
Yeah. Thank you. I really enjoyed talking to you too.
Thank you. I will link Orshi's whole social media and website and everything in the episode notes. You can find my links as well in the episode notes. And thank you very much for listening to us, and talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.